What's going on, everybody? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Guerrero, former United States Marine, and I've been waiting a long time to say this, but for those of you who knew me when I served in the military underneath my nickname, Magic Mike, I'm coming back just for you guys, especially if you like all my other past videos. You're going to love this, along with all the shorts and reels that are going to be coming out. So many people who knew me in the past, like my mother and others, so on and so forth, they'd say, yo, I know you, something's wrong, so on and so forth. I'm like, yo, did you understand what I did in the military? Did you understand what I did afterwards? Did you understand the things that I've been through? Do you understand this, that, and the third? Unless you have a video camera on me, in me, or somewhere around me, you probably don't. So when you start asking questions or refusing to ask questions, you're only holding back your own knowledge and gaining of knowledge because you fear understanding, because you don't want to look like a fool by asking a question. Now, if you paid attention to lesson 7 of class and the last video, the only dumb question is the one that's not asked. So, by all means, please ask questions before you want to state opinions so that you have a better understanding. Nelson Mandela, also Simon Sinek, who wrote the book Why Leaders Speak Last, talks about why Nelson Mandela was the last person to speak in a conversation and why great leaders eat last. It's because it gives everybody a chance to say what they have to say. It gives them a better understanding before they state their opinions and rhetoric. And it also gives them a competitive advantage when they're going to go ahead and rebuttal or retort someone, so on and so forth. Now, I know I use different words, but I understand that the vocabulary I use is hard to understand for some people, and they might get misconstrued or upset. So, an example was when I was in the military, I had to give a class on psychology and things like that. And my master guns could go ahead and vouch for this, along with a bunch of sergeants and other enlisted people, as well as officers who literally flat out came up to me afterwards and said, yo, I didn't know you were that smart. So, let's get into it. So when it comes to situational awareness and proximity awareness, well, what are you actually being aware to, right? Because both masculine and feminine have different awarenesses, right? If I go up to a male and I come straight in his face like this, he's going to back up a little bit because it's more an aggressive approach. Women, on the other hand, are used to men and others coming up to them in their frontal view. Now, if you want to approach a masculine person, I suggest doing it from the side. Now, why do I say that? Well, because as I did this explanation when I was in the military, drill instructors actually get taught to shift and alter body language and things like that, and use interpersonal communication to also train their recruits, so on and so forth, in whatever endeavor that they're doing. So, not only do they have an understanding of interpersonal communication, they have an understanding of actual communication utilizing their voice. Remember, pitch, tone, and everything else that we talked about in other lessons and in other videos. So in this example, I was actually talking to a crowd of people, and there was a gentleman by the name of Connors in there. Connors, if you're watching this, what's up? I don't know if you remember this, but they were sitting down in the bleachers, so on and so forth. I said, who's scared to get approached, so on and so forth, etc., blah, 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 blah. And out of nowhere, I went real close to Connor, so on and so forth, directly at him, and he backed up. I said, why are you backing up? He goes, because you got close to me. I said, that makes no sense, because Christian, who's sitting next to you, is literally touching you on the arm and your shoulder, and you didn't have any problems with that. You didn't back up, you didn't scoot over, or whatever the case. So what made this scenario different? These are the little intricacies that people don't understand, and when you don't understand them, you get lost in the sauce, as we say. So when it comes to spiritual teachings and warfare, well, let's talk about it, shall we? Because a lot of people still don't understand what I talked about in the beginning. You know, when I talked about wearing your emotions on your sleeve, my mother misinterpreted as a line that she could use afterwards. I was talking about the tattoos and the things people use to reflect and emulate and express themselves because their speech has been curbed. Now, true or false? One of the First Amendment rights is freedom of speech. So if you're going to curb someone's speech, they're just going to find another way to express themselves. So if they can't go ahead and express themselves a certain way, they're going to go ahead and do it another way. And that might upset you. But they're going to get to the point where they start to push back and you're not going to like it. And you're going to say, whoa, 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 whoa. Why are you being so hostile? They're not being hostile. People have just been putting them or trying to put them in a box, and they don't want to be in a box, right? The old IQ exam, in order to beat it, you had to think outside the box, or better yet, go outside of the box to complete the puzzle, right? With the 9 dots, so on and so forth. Now, this was a quote that was also reiterated by Will Smith, someone else my mother decided to mention when I had a Shakespeare quote that I told her. And I said, who said it? She says, oh, Will Smith. I said, no, it was William Shakespeare. But even if you did say Will Smith, it makes no sense. Or it could be because William Shakespeare was a pen name, meaning it wasn't the actual person. It was more like a ghostwriter, so on and so forth. The name belonged to someone else, but the person writing everything was the originator. And that's perfectly fine, because in the times, in the world that we live in, especially throughout time, people have always had an issue with the freedom of speech. So people learn to communicate in different ways. If you look at spiritual teachings, the Tower of Babel and everything that happened there, they had to go ahead and break that down, so on and so forth, jumble up the languages. Now you have different languages, so on and so forth, because people are getting too close to being a certain way. But who gets upset over that? Last time I checked, the enemy gets upset about that, not the individual that actually wants to do something in this world or do something good. They're all for it. They're all about it. They're willing to help, so on and so forth. The only person that either feels oppressed or is oppressed and lives in that mindset, they're stuck there, and they're going to push back and speak fear. Now, there's something you don't want to do to devils, or should I say devil dogs, because I'm a Marine, and if there are any Marines listening to this, you definitely know what I'm speaking about. So don't preach fear to a devil dog. Why? I don't know about the other branches, but there's something about us Marines that when we hear somebody talking in fear or acting like a little girl because they can't go ahead and accept certain words or carry out a conversation properly, it goes ahead and ignites a flame. Truly, it ignites a flame within us, and we say, yo, stand up. Why the hell are you acting like that? If I have to, in class, we used to be known, and I don't know if you guys know this, but there was a sermon talking about whacking and stuff like that. We used to wake up, so on and so forth, right? We used to smack people, wake them up, etc., especially if they were asleep in class, because last time I checked, the stuff that they were teaching us was going to save our life. So why not have them pay attention? Why not whack them one good time so that they understand for next time? Now, some of you may not like the tonality, the vocabulary, or how I'm pitching my voice to you. I quite honestly don't care, because if you're not liking this, you're not my audience. It wasn't meant for you. So I'm sorry. You're more than welcome to go ahead and state your opinion, but I quite honestly don't care unless you want to have an actual conversation. Now, getting back into spiritual warfare and teachings, when I talked about the tattoos, yeah, the tattoos told you about things like what tribe you were from, what you believed in, who was, on your side or who you thought was on your side, people that you care about, so on and so forth. You know how people normally get the names of somebody tattooed on their ring finger or on their body somewhere? That's a descriptor that gives people more information without having to ask you questions. That's a part of interpersonal communication. So if you don't understand that, go ahead and go back to class and check out lessons 1 through 5 so you can catch up to understand what it is that I'm saying. Now, if you're feeling what I'm putting down right now in this moment, go ahead and smash that like button, and don't forget to follow me. This video is not going to be for everybody, and if you made it this far, I just want to say thank you. And if you're thinking about joining the military, by all means, please, by all means, reach out. Go ahead and leave something in the comments. I'll fill you in on things that I've done. I'll fill you in on not only my MOS, which was 2311 Ammo Tech, but what does it mean to go PTAD? What does it mean to be an adjunct? What does it mean, well, I didn't change my job, but they kind of borrowed me for certain things because I was good at certain things? Well, that would be like PTAD or being an adjunct, so on and so forth. Or if you play video games, it would be like you were being augmented onto that team for a particular reason because you had special attributes, but your job title remained the same. So if anybody wanted to go ahead and do a background research, they'd just be like, oh, he's just an ammo tech, or, oh, they are just this. They're just supply or logistics or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of intricacies that you may or may not know when it comes to the military and how we utilize everything within there, especially within the Marine Corps. Now, when it comes to other things, right? You want to be able to communicate sometimes in plain English. However, when there's other people around that, well, are just refusing and just are choosing to push back against you, you have to go ahead and switch up your game, switch up your style and strategy as well as terminology. Because last time this happened, there was a lot of people that sided with this particular individual. And I can tell you right now, my time in the experience of being in the military, or I should say my time and experience of not only being in the military, but getting trained by a priest when I was younger for free, gives me some type of bravado and the ability to speak with conviction on these matters, because Father Ralph and a couple other people were a little bit hard on me, including my choir director, Tony, when I sang in the choir at St. Nicholas Church, because I almost became a priest, but decided not to. So I didn't have to, per se, go to seminary school in order to study spiritual teachings, because I wasn't trying to get locked into just Christianity or one thing to teach, because that is, well, a religion slash belief. However, when you're talking about spirituality, it encompasses everything as a whole. There was a great Buddhist monk that said, demon hand, Buddha heart, right? What does that mean? Have a heart like Buddha, but don't be scared to use the hand like a demon. Right? In the military, we call ourselves devil dogs, and we got that name from the Germans. You don't believe us? Go ahead and read history, or go ask a couple German military personnel where the Marine Corps got their name, or go ask a couple Marines where the Marine Corps got their nickname devil dog from. Then maybe you'll start to understand how terminology and phrases, so on and so forth, get broken down to us Barney style, so that we all understand, so that when we go back out into the real world, we not only understand what you're saying, but when we communicate, you think we're crazy because you don't understand what we're saying. And if you've ever seen the TV show, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? There's been plenty of times, if you have seen that show, where people that are smarter or think they're smarter or older than a fifth grader get lost in the sauce, because you lose things over time, such as memory and things that you were taught in the past. So you have other people that come out, like myself and others, that like to speak and use rhetoric and educate people and get them to tickle the brain a little bit in order to go ahead and get you to open your eyes. What does that mean? Well, remember when I talked about being aware? When I approached Connors, he backed up. There was no reason to, but his excuse was that I was too close, when somebody else was literally right next to him, tapping him on the shoulder. It made no sense. Reason why was because, well, he didn't understand that, because the brain is over 2,000 years old, and it was designed to help us survive and replicate. Now, if you ever studied Mystery, who is a pickup artist, and Neil Strauss, so on and so forth, you would understand survival and replication. It's a natural order of things. And in this video, we're going to go ahead and discuss that a little bit more. What do I mean by survival and replication? Well, what are my chances of getting with somebody? What does my money situation look like? Do I actually have the freedom, so on and so forth, that I've been told that I have, unless somebody's trying to block them or push me into a corner so that I do open my mouth a particular way? What happens when I start questioning the medical system and I start questioning doctors, so on and so forth? Oh, they don't like it. But now we have AI that can fact check, that can pass a medical exam, that can pull resources and references and call them out on their BS, because they're only profiting at the end of the day, right? 9 times out of 10, most doctors within the United States, and ask yourself this if you ever traveled outside the United States or you're not from the United States, do you need to go to a doctor, to go to a pharmacy, to pick up a prescription of medication that can save your life? Now, I've been on many cruises, and I can tell you right now, I've gone to the pharmacy, picked up a Z-Pack, so on and so forth, etc. in other countries. I'm guessing because, well, either they have a brain, or they know not to abuse the drugs, or, well, let's make it even more fair. The doctors are actually there to actually help people, and they say, yo, go to the pharmacy. You don't even need to pay me this amount of money for a prescription. You can do this yourself and do this, this, and this, and follow these steps. I don't need to spend boatloads of money on multiple doctor visits. I don't need to, so on and so forth, etc. before I get a prescription. I could just go to the pharmacy, speak to the pharmacist, and they prescribe me what I need in order to cure my ailment. Now, when it comes to mental health, that's a whole other bucket of worms, because a lot of people don't even understand the terminology that they're using, right? Let's get into it. Tower of Babel. This is spiritual teachings, right? They had to tear down the tower and then go ahead and create new languages, so on and so forth, to confuse the people, at least in the story, right? But there's other stories that talk about the same thing. Now let's talk about the mental health community for a second. If you are about to perform on stage, and if you don't know where I'm at, I'm actually standing near a stage. If you were about to perform on stage, right, you would feel a certain way. You would either feel excited or you would feel nervous. But the medical community has you change that word, and now they say you have anxiety, and that anxiety requires medication. No, it's just the way that they're trying to train you, and I get you to identify certain words and definitions and put it into your vocabulary, everyday use, and incorporate that so that you're okay with whatever diagnosis that they give you. Because you can say, I don't have anxiety, I'm really nervous right now. You can say, I don't have anxiety, I'm excited right now. Change your vocabulary, you change your mindset, and you become a better individual because you choose to be. And you show that with the words and the interpretations of the words and how you utilize them in your speech, your everyday life, and everywhere else. So make sure you remember that. If you're taking notes, go ahead and do so. And please, if this video helped you, go ahead and smash that like button, because it not only helps me out, it helps other people see videos like this so that they can better help you. Now, moving forward, when it comes to saying things out loud and talking fearful and all this other stuff, most people live an oppressed life. What does it mean to live an oppressed life? Well, every time you try to do something, you get smacked down. Well, that's a learning curve, right? But when it comes to actually trying to do something, and then you actually have proof that people are pushing back, that is called oppression. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's talk about it, shall we? When people came over here, if you think about slavery, they weren't allowed to do certain things, right? Because just like slaves aren't allowed to do certain things, oppressed people aren't allowed to do certain things. So if you're feeling oppressed, do you feel like a slave or do you feel like a civilian, right? So last time I checked, I former military and I feel like a civilian, which means I shouldn't feel oppressed. However, certain people that I come around, like my mother and other people, like my ex-girlfriend who liked to go ahead and preach fear to me about things that they were scared of, I was trying to get them to not only break through, but open their eyes and actually see what it is that they're trying to say. They would say things like, oh, I'm super aware. I've been around the block, so on and so forth. That's perfectly great and tangible facts, so on and so forth. But you did it back then. You're not doing it now. So it kind of contradicts, right? It's like, oh, I used to make this amount of money in 1960. Yeah, and how much did everything cost back in 1960? What was life like back in 1960 or 1980 or 1990? Let's talk about inflation and how that impacted everybody, so on and so forth, because those effects, although it happened in a more minute manner in history, it didn't happen so dramatically as it did within the last 3 to 4 years. I mean, school, the cost of school has gone up over 1,000%. You have everything else that went up over 25% when it comes to inflation. Average raise is only 5% for individuals working in a corporation. And now you want to talk to me about how you had it hard, so on and so forth, etc. It's literally the same comparison, but people don't normally come into a conversation to lift people up. They come into a conversation because they listen to respond. They don't listen to understand. And that's the mistake, and that's the conundrum that most people live in, is that they listen to respond, they don't listen to understand, and that comes from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Now, if you haven't read that book, by all means, go ahead and do so, because it will open your eyes and make you more aware of the world around you. Now, most people will say, oh, well, I'm not spiritual. Well, what does that even mean? Well, spirituality and religion are 2 different things. Believing in a higher power, God, creator, universe, that's spirituality. Having a specific title or label, now you're falling into religion. And that's something that was never actually taught, but controlled, excuse me, controlled, manufactured, and manifested by those in power to control people. If you've seen the movie The Book of Eli with Denzel Washington, this was something that he was trying to prevent in there because he knew that people will not only fall for it, but buy the crap that people are actually saying to them because they're too lazy to actually read the words that are in the different books and teachings. So therefore, by which people will go ahead and utilize that, take the easy way out, listen to somebody who's in a position of authority, and think that what they're saying is the gospel and the truth, when in actuality it's not. Because if you go back and look at the etymology of the words and what was being said, you understand and come to realize it is a completely different thing, so on and so forth. It's like telling somebody, yeah, you have an X and X and an X and Y chromosome, and that's how you get your masculine or your male and female. But I checked. I looked under a microscope. I've seen DNA. It doesn't make the shape X and X or X and Y. So why does it have that depiction? So on and so forth. You know, it's funny because when the coronavirus came out, people, you know, got scared, so on and so forth. But their ideology was that the Corona beer was giving them the virus, so it affected the stock price. This is the naivete that I have, you know, the naivete that people have when it comes to not understanding certain etymologies of words, right? So because it affected the stock price and it, you know, affected people's money, quite honestly, they said, yeah, we got to change the name. So they switched it to COVID-19, right? COVID morbidity, whatever the case may be. COVID-19. When COVID-19 got changed over, it left the Corona stock price alone, so on and so forth, and people were able to get on their day and just focus on the quote-unquote disease and pandemic that happened, so on and so forth. Because you mean to tell me that a mysterious virus came out of nowhere within a year because it affected you or whoever was involved with it? Now that your life was on the line, you were able to come up with an antidote in less than a year, or at least something to fight back. But we have things like cancer, AIDS, other things that are going on in the world that's been around for thousands of years, such as diabetes, etc. And now what? You can't figure that out because it doesn't affect you or your life isn't on the line? Give me a break. Because last time I checked, when the government shut down, and this was while I was in, I got to experience this. Nobody in the military got paid. And the banks even said, including Navy Federal, we should probably pay the people that are protecting us. Because if we don't, they're not going to protect us. And no matter what we say, we're going to be screwed. So the banks came in, saved the day, pushed our paychecks out, and then waited as an IOU from the government to get their money back. Because they knew that if they did not pay the people that protected them, they will not be protected. Because I can tell you right now, for anybody watching or listening, how many of you would go ahead and protect people that you don't know? Just like in the movie Fences, when Denzel Washington is standing talking to his son and he has a Marine uniform behind him and he says, I don't have to know you to protect you. That's the thing that people don't understand. I don't have to know you to protect you, care about you, and show you the compassion and love that you didn't get from somebody, so on and so forth. But I am going to tell you, I will go ahead and not give up on you. I will keep pushing for you, even when you have given up on yourself. And that's something I stole from a drill instructor because it was once taught to me and I like to pay it forward, right? One of the things people should understand is that each one should reach one and teach one, but that doesn't happen, right? Because people have a tendency to listen to respond and not listen to understand, so they can't really reach anybody because all they're doing is either pushing them away or trying to just force their opinion and trying to get them to go in the direction that they want them to go, utilizing different strategies of influence. Oh, you have a nephew that looks up to you. Oh, you have a brother that looks up to you. That doesn't speak to you. You have a nephew from a family that barely communicates with you. They think you're weird, so on and so forth, etc. Why are you trying to use these things in order to try to manipulate my decision or actions? Because you're living in fear, not I, right? I've seen death, I've seen suicides, I've seen people blow up. I've had a Benelli shotgun go off in my ear because some genius wanted to take a damn selfie while we were at the range, etc. And that's fact. If you don't believe me, you can go ask Sergeant Marrero, who's now a chief warrant officer, who I served with, and go ahead and ask him, yo, was McIntosh being a dummy when she tried to use a Benelli that was loaded live, no safety on, to go ahead and then throw it up on her shoulder, standing next to Guerrero and taking a selfie so she could look cute on Instagram. Go ahead, test that theory by all means. And then go ahead and ask some of the other people that I spoke to, like Sergeant Goldie, so on and so forth. Not Goldsby, but Goldie, when I was in the process of a lap move. For those of you that want to question certain things without looking into things even further, because you're only relying on the information in an SRB. So please, by all means, before you come to Magic Mike, so on and so forth, you might want to understand why I led security at the ASP, why I did certain things, and how I actually got the name Magic Mike before you go ahead and contest and state that you know me because you're watching me already, because God forbid somebody hacks your phone, taps into your phone with whatever means necessary. So now they're just pointing the finger, laughing, etc. By all means, go for it. Because I can tell you right now, as Justin Timberlake says, what goes around comes around, and history is bound to repeat itself, right? Because if you look at the patterns in history, look at what happened to the buildup of World War I, World War II, and what we're moving into now. There was a great book called Future Wars that came out that talked about how the next war, such as Civil War or World War III, would not be fought with actual weapons, but with technology and biochemical warfare. Well, COVID-19 was one. Technology already depicted and showed itself with the Microsoft shutdown to show how powerful Microsoft was, and then Apple got attacked. Okay, cool. That's technology down. They exploited the flaws, so on and so forth. Hope you guys got that. That's a security flaw. Then we had COVID, miraculously came, killed a bunch of people, but don't worry, they could figure out an antidote or a virus, antivirus for it if we have the right people that are involved that can also too get affected by the virus. That's another security flaw. So now we have a gap in technology and security because they exposed the flaw. We have another one in the medical community because they expose that they can cure certain things, they just choose not to. And now what? We have social unrest that's developing because of what? Politics, the media, everything else, what's going on. I think it's funny because a lot of people like to quote to me, oh, you have pride, this, that, and the third. But if I bring a homosexual with me to church, all of a sudden they want to go ahead and get offended, so on and so forth, and now their eyes go somewhere else. And they say pride comes before the fall. Well, I think it's funny that Pride Month comes before the fall season. I'm going to say that again. Pride Month comes before fall. Think about that. So for those of you who want to be funny, for those of you who want to go ahead and talk about media, why don't you go ahead and look at history and look at what the Romans did. Look at the Greeks and how they trained the Spartans. There was no hate amongst these different letters, so on and so forth. They encouraged love. Why? Because you would fight harder for somebody that you love than somebody that you don't know. And when you're serving in the military, you also get that feeling. This is why when military personnel get out, they normally say, I miss the people, not the job. Some people miss the job, others actually miss the people and the camaraderie. And for you veterans out there, I'm sure you could go ahead and relate. Now, when it comes to things like spiritual warfare, look at the picture of the Last Supper. What's going on there? Why is somebody whispering? Or why are they whispering to each other? At least that's what the depiction is. Why is someone holding a knife? Why is, so on and so forth. And the knife that I'm talking about is the one that's hidden under the table. And for those of you who have been tracking me, by all means, go look up when I actually look this up, because I'm working with memory here, not your tech. So why is there a knife underneath the table at the Last Supper? Why are they doing this? Well, there's a thing in magic called mentalism. It's also a hermetic principle. So if you have studied hermetic principles, so on and so forth, and you have learned spiritual teachings, you know about mentalism, manifestation, and everything else. Now, if you could get people to think something a certain way and then confuse them along the way, they will forever be lost. Right? So therefore, it is the shepherd or the wolf or the dog's job that protects the sheep to get them back on track, open their eyes, maybe bark at them every once in a while so they can say, oh, I thought this. No, you're wrong. Open your eyes, so on and so forth, right? I'm not trying to lead a lamb to the slaughter. I'm actually trying to take them to different pastures, as they would say. But most people feel offended because of the rhetoric that I use. So before I close out this video, one of the key pieces that you should take away is that if you're playing with tarot cards and everything else and you haven't studied exactly what it is that you're doing, remember, the same deck of 52 playing cards tells you the same shit that the damn oracle cards or tarot cards would tell you, right? 52 cards in a deck, 52 weeks in a year. You count up all the pips, that's 365 days. You include the Joker, that's the leap year. You have 4 different types of cards, that's 4 different seasons, 13 of each one, 13 phases of the moon, and the list goes on and on. So please, by all means, before I pull out a deck of cards and show you why my name was Magic Mike in our next video, by all means, do your research, for all means. Now, when it gets to other things such as war and stuff like that, remember, we have the technical front, we have the biochemical front, and now we're going to go ahead and we're going to start seeing the media and politics and everything else start turning people against one another. And that is the buildup to a great disaster, because not only are you going to have mass confusion and mass hysteria underneath mass hypnosis due to psychology, because people are listening to those that people listen to. And if you want to be an effective leader or communicator, you have to learn to speak to the people that people listen to, so that they can go ahead and tell your message to the people, so that people don't look at you like you're crazy because you don't have a large following, but look at them like they're idle and listen to understand versus listening to you to respond. I'm only speaking from personal experience because of the lack of subscribers and followers, which means I don't have enough social proof to go ahead and say certain things and have the bravado and gravitas behind me, because the social proof isn't there. What do I mean by social proof? If it looks like a duck, acts like a duck, it must be a duck. If I was dressed in a police uniform, 9 times out of 10, you would think I was a police officer. If I was dressed like a medical professional or a doctor with a white coat and everything and a stethoscope, you would think I was a medical professional, especially if I threw in some fancy words or terminology. So think about that. Look up some of the stuff that I talked about in this video when it comes to spiritual warfare or warfare in general, military teaching, so on and so forth. But a lot of you have asked, a lot of you said, when are you coming back? I'm telling you right now, Magic Mike is back, and I'm glad to be here. So for those of you who never knew me before when I was in the military and only knew me before, and you think you have an inclination of what it is that I used to do, what I'm capable of, so on and so forth, by all means, I'm gonna let you know right now, I'm just getting warmed up. So I'll see you guys in the next video, and be aware that class lesson 8, creative but scared, is coming out. And for all of you creatives out there, I encourage you to watch lesson 7, because lesson 8 will go ahead and start to remove the fear that you have of not only expressing yourself with whatever means you have possible, speech, art, so on and so forth, etc., but remove the fear of expressing yourself. Most people are even scared to open their mouth or say what they're actually, interested in and what they want to do, because of all the pressures and social anxieties and crap that other people have on the outside world that feed into them, and they don't have an outlet or whatever. We're going to be building a community for people just like you to go ahead and be a part of that community, to go ahead and be lifted up, to go ahead and come in with a mindset and have somebody come in with a positive one to bring you up even higher, as they say. Because as the song goes, bring me a higher love. Well, here it is, people. Magic Mike is back. I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. God bless. I love you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.